Crime investigators, what's the creepiest unsolved case you investigated that scares you to this day? Someone was picking up drunk homeless people in my town, about 20 years back, beating them up and dropping them far from town during the winter season, which can last for about 2 to 8 months and drop as low as -45 Celsius. I work as an investigator for the county medical examiner. The cases that always creep me out are the Gene and John Does, especially the younger ones. How could a family not report a loved one missing for 10, 20 or 30 years? Some of these cases are not suspicious, so it's not like the family is worried about going to prison. We're looking at forensic genealogy to assist with some of the cases. Someone killed 50 dogs and left them on top of parked cars for a year, then it just stopped. A local girl went missing about 2 years ago. Whole community and neighboring communities got involved. Had a hashtag they painted on car windows and everything. Tried like crazy to find her. The parents still hold out hope, but I'm not convinced they really do. And it's devastating to watch. I have friends that know the family. I have 2 young girls, and this is a fear that my job forces me to take home with me, that one day they'll disappear and that's it. There are some sex trafficking hotspots nearby. A week after that girl disappeared, I told my wife she was most likely already dead. Guy let his dog out and it came back with a decaying limb. When they went to search they found a makeshift altar. Creepy stuff. Not an investigator. In League City TX, there used to be a dead-end road. The city grew like crazy. In the process of clearing land they found dozens of girls buried. Still several unidentified. They stumbled onto the dumping ground for a serial killer. It's called the road if you're familiar with that area. They did a documentary on it at some point. My sister went to prom with a guy who lived next door to this. One night she is over at his house and a random girl comes running. No shows on, screaming, banging on the door saying some guy picked her up or was following her. Boys say the man was nowhere to be found. Prom date and brother get her to safety, then proceed to tell my sister all the weird ghost stories because weird things like that always happen around here. They thought she was spooked by feelings of being watched or something, until a few years later they started finding bodies. At my first department, someone was stringing up dogs in the trees behind houses with their throats cut and bled dry. Serial killer behavior, obviously just killing them to kill them. Worked on that case a couple weeks, but after 4 or 5 dogs, it just stopped and my bosses wouldn't let me work on it anymore with all the real crime going on. I still think it was a future serial killer practicing. Mystery was solved a few days after it happened, but I figured I would share anyways. In the town I live in there's a rundown motel that all the druggies stay at. Well anyways, there was a night that a man walked into and pulled out a sawed-off shotgun and blew the cashier's brains all over the wall. Stole $112 and some change. Obviously our investigation was opened and for 4 days they didn't have any leads or anything. Turns out on the evening of the 4th night they supposedly found the murderer behind the motel in a cornfield in a fetal position, just rocking back and forth. Someone had been leaving half-eaten fish all over West London, as in counter-bought fresh fish, scales and all. It was an ongoing cold case cause the saliva was the same on each one. No one was really victimized by it though, so we never got a chance to properly look into it. The 35-pound bags of human vomit that appeared in the PKG lot of the Radnor, Par Bed Bath & Beyond. For a few weeks, the woman on Philly walking to the Acme MKT, who thought someone ran by and hit her accidentally. She shopped for 30 minutes at Acme, then walked home and her daughter discovered a chef's knife lodged in her neck. No one at Acme said anything and the knife was visible on surveillance. All the people going missing in federal parks, FBI does not track them. Guesses are 1,600/ disappear and some are not found. It happens at an alarmingly high rate compared to other places. 2 girls in their 20s round murdered in their car, McDonald's food in their laps, windows up, doors locked, no sign of a struggle. Was my last case I ever worked. 3 years ago. No suspects have been arrested. In a town close to me, a few years ago a little boy went missing. He was in a foster home with his siblings. There was apparent previous reports from neighbors of them wandering off frequently because they were left alone without food, breaking into garages I think. He was reported missing by the foster mom. She went on TV and everything. I think I remember. There was so many search parties. We live in the desert, so there's a lot of open land. I stopped hearing things about it. Eventually I asked one of my buddies who works in that PD and he told me they never got any real answers. They found remains years later that they believed to be his in a canal. But it had been so long not much was left. Also they think wild animals had probably spread what was left of the remains around after all these years. Back in the early 80s, a 16-year-old boy was walking home from a party about a mile from his house when he was intentionally hit by a vehicle and dragged by the vehicle before being dumped in front of his house for his father to find his body in the morning. The police say they have suspects but not enough evidence to make any arrests. There are still posters all over the town and surrounding areas with his picture asking for information more than 35 years later. Really a tragic story that needs closure. In Takefek murders 1922 Germany, creepy sounds in a barn and an entire rural family is slaughtered including a maid who had just arrived. Evidence at the scene showed that the killer had stayed in the home for several days, lit a fire, and fed the animals. Nothing valuable was taken. My father was a police officer some time ago. While in school his platoon was called with every other policeman in region. A kid was missing. They were looking for him for quite some time, yet they did not found him. He was supposed to be somewhere in small forest near the town he was living in. Kid just sunk. After some time people would contact police and say that kid was seen almost 500 kilometers away, alone. They had many suspects but all got their alibi. The case was open for almost 20 years and was closed like 10 years ago. We'll try to find some info about it, edit post, but here in Poland we do not put such information to public. An Israeli girl, Tyarada, was murdered in her school's bathroom, and this one guy, Roman Zdorov, was convicted, but DNA evidence has shown that someone else committed the murder. You can read more about the case here.